Hi friends, I'm host Eric, and this is my beloved darling Rachel, and together we comprise Talking with Fan People, the internet television program that's always on and broadcasting the things you need to hear. Today we're going to be talking about Cobra Kai, the television program that you can access now on Netflix. It was originally actually a YouTube original in the short-lived, I guess you'd call it, YouTube originals phase. And we started watching it then, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we followed it over to Netflix. It's one of the best shows I've ever seen, frankly. And I want to talk about it in ways that are going to include spoilers. If you haven't seen the whole of season 4, then finish watching it before you watch this video. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is casting. So this is a crazy mishmash. This is a huge production, right? It's got a lot of characters in it. And the casting has got to integrate the old characters from the old movies, all of which are included in the storyline here, and then new characters from Cobra Kai, which are all the kids, basically. And, Daniel's wife, and Miguel's mom, and various characters like that. But the thing is, I think it's especially brilliantly cast. Like, the kids they got are great actors. Anybody stand out to you, Rachel, is particularly doing a great job with the acting?
I think they all are.
I think this kid here, this Chinese kid,
Yes.
or whatever, Asian kid, he's really good at being a bully.
Yeah, he is that stereotypical bully, like teenage bully, who's like, you can tell he comes from money and he just picks on people for fun. He's totally that person.
And then this kid here, who's a new addition in the 4th season, I forget what his name is, the kid next to the Asian kid, Kenny, he's a really good actor too.
Yeah.
He does a phenomenal job with that, with a challenging role. His character has displays a lot of range of growth, kind of. At first he's super scared, and then he turns into the bully right at the end of season 4, and he does an incredible job. I think that they cast the 2 lead male kids, Miguel and Robby, fantastically, and they both do a phenomenal job. At the very end of season 4, when Miguel's reading that letter, there's one moment in the letter read as he's doing the voiceover that I wish he had acted it slightly differently. But what's weird is that this show has a strange capacity for me to be super aware of the strings, pulleys, whatever, the making it work, and yet it's still totally working on me 100%.
Me too.
Rachel and I were both in tears, standing up, sitting down. First of all, I couldn't believe how it transitioned from episode 8 to episode 9. At the end of episode 8, there's Stingray getting beaten up by Sensei Silver. And then all of a sudden, at the beginning of episode 9, you're at the tournament. Like, what the hell? What happened? But it didn't, ultimately, by the time you got to the end, you realized, I haven't had a moment to take a breath this whole season. Even though Rachel and I didn't try to binge it, we did 4 episodes, then 2, then 2, then 3, or something like that, and it's very intense. It's a non-stop roller coaster ride of thrills, chills, emotions, and everything else like that.
Yeah.
It's just oh my God, no! There's all these moments where, where Sam walks in and Tori is working, as a mermaid and shit like that, and it just makes me go, no! Oh, no!
Yeah.
And then it's what's her name? Sam's mom. Every time I see her talking to Tori, I think, oh God, what's she gonna say? What's gonna go on here?
Yeah.
And then as Johnny's in the locker room telling Miguel, go out and fight anyway. I'm just like, oh, this isn't gonna end well. But I think they made it fun and perfect in its overarching balance. So it's like everything comes together in this weird, it's like super grown symmetry that all comes together perfectly for this show to be amazing. Which is to say, things like Kreese grows in that he sort of resolves his own demons about Johnny Lawrence. Johnny Lawrence and Daniel both grow in that they don't stick to their own thing exclusively, and they're not so stubborn about shit, and they realize they're being the kids kind of here and being childish. Miguel grows enough to say he doesn't really care about the karate anymore. Now that you adults have made it dumb, I don't really care anymore, which is, I think, an important lesson. Sam learned... I was so conflicted at the end as to whether I even wanted Sam to win or Tori.
I was rooting for Tori, actually, just because she had been through this season through so much, like, bottom hit the bottom kind of stuff, like.
Well, because in the overarching life narrative of each of the characters, it's like no matter how much they made her deserve it, having the rich entitled girl also win the tournament just
doesn't really.
It doesn't really fly with good story writing, in my opinion.
No, and they can get her win over with. There's not like there's not like we don't have to wait for another season for Tori to get a win.
Yeah, they didn't try to. They are not trying to milk it.
No.
They're moving ahead into territory that I'm concerned about. I'm concerned that there's another season. But of course, at the same time, there has to be another season because of the way the symmetry worked. So it's like, Johnny steals Daniel's daughter as a student. Daniel steals Miguel as a student. Johnny becomes Miguel's stepdad or whatever. So that the two, Daniel and Johnny, can accuse each other of stealing each other's kid, basically. Tori does some fucked up stuff, but she also gets help from Sam's mom at the end, which, if Sam then won, would put Tori in too submissive a position, right? Mm-hmm. So you've got to have Tori win at that point. And as far as Robby goes, well, he had to grow as well and learn that you can't always split the baby in half. Sometimes splitting the baby in half creates Kenny's growth, which is not good growth, right, for a character. Meanwhile, sure. Meanwhile, this guy, Asian guy back here, what's the Asian guy's name again?
I don't know the Asian guy's name.
And what's the nerdy guy's name? I mean, this guy, Hawk is Eli.
Yes.
This is Sam and Miguel, Daniel, Johnny, Kreese, Silver, Robby, Tori, Kenny. But we missed two people. This guy back here and this guy. The two tall kids in the back.
Yeah. Noah?
I don't remember. Anyway, regardless of their names, they made the storyline with Eli and the nerd friend there really symmetrical as well, as they've gone through this back and forth between where it starts off as their best friends in season 1, and then Eli basically bullies his nerd friend in, I don't know, season 2 maybe, season 3. They joined forces together or something. They split apart into different dojos. They, et cetera, et cetera. And at the end, by the end of season 4, they repaired their friendship. Eli's lost his ego, but regained his confidence when that chick, who's his girlfriend, whose name I forget, comes up before the tournament and kisses him and stuff. So it's a and the moment where Eli/Hawk says, "I just realized who I am. I'm the guy who's going to win this whole fucking thing." It's like, even remembering it makes me like tear up. Oh my god, this show is so good. And then, of course, Silver pulls the old fast one using Stingray to get Kreese imprisoned at the end of season 4, right after Kreese will finally learn something and becomes a decent human being kind of for a moment. But, it's just like Daniel was saying the whole time, that Silver, he's a bad guy. Bad guy. I would say, I'm going to add a couple of things about personality type, which this video is not really about personality type stuff at all, but I'm going to include a couple of little things here. So, Daniel is clearly an ISFJ, and he's so obsessed with preserving the past. I actually think probably Ralph Macchio is, in fact, an ISFJ. He seems so enamored with this project. You just kind of get the sense that, and this is an ISFJ perfect storm. It's like he's able to incorporate everybody who was formative in his youth back into, bring the whole gang back together, bring the band back together, so to speak, incorporate new blood in ways that are, in ways that he can still sort of be central to the story and have a good story, because if it were just old men fighting out their teenage rivalries directly, it would be pretty sad, So the thing is, they've incorporated like everybody from all of the movies that they could find. They had Johnny's friends being more sort of active in season 1, and one of them actually had cancer, I think, in real life and died, and they had that in the show as well. And then, that's a sort of homage that an ISFJ is going to pay. Now, granted, I know he's not responsible for the writing, Ralph Macchio, but he is an executive producer on the thing. And even if Ralph Macchio is not an ISFJ, Daniel LaRusso definitely is. So I think it's kind of neat to see a show which has so prominently and obviously an ISFJ character in playing so central a role, because it's not necessarily, it's not uncommon in anime and stuff to have your FE tool function users be the main character, especially if they're males. But because they're interfacery types, it's much easier to get a grasp on an ISFJ character as a writer than it would be to get a grasp on an INFJ character as a writer, because the ISFJ character has a ton of backstory influencing them all the time, constantly, whereas the INFJ character is not referencing things through that lens of their experience in their past. So INFJ characters are more difficult to write. I would say that as far as typing other characters in the thing, Johnny clearly seems like an ESTP. He's not illogical, but he's not a particularly bright ESTP, and they've kind of done the type of disservices with this character, just sort of this stereotypical Coors drinking, blood sport watching, internet rejecting Luddite, which is not how actual ESTPs are, but in a lot of ways he does represent that character. He's very much about, don't stand there and talk about it, do something, And certainly there are plenty of times in life when that's appropriate. I guess the other thing I would mention is, as far as characters go, Robby, I would say, seems ISTP-ish or potentially INFJ-ish. If you were going to write an INFJ character that was situationally positioned such that they had to do a lot of SE kind of stuff, I think Robby might be such a character. Certainly his revelation to his father, Johnny, at the end regarding his consternation over the apparent impacts of his mentoring upon Kenny, turning him into a bully, would suggest that he's sort of had this moment of realizing his estimation of his capacity to balance all factors without splitting babies in half was limited. He overestimated his capacity to impact that system, and he wishes he hadn't done anything. That's kind of an INFJ moment there, because he did such a great job with the kid across the board, he just had this one moment at the end of the tournament where he let Kreese tell him, go put any hope away for that kid, and Robby busted his nose open. So he followed through on what the Cobra Kai way was, but the thing is, he's been a fence sitter the whole time. So why is that necessarily? I guess the point is, he realized that when it came down to a key moment, he couldn't fence sit on that issue. He either had to say no to the sensei or go with the sensei's instructions. He went with the sensei's instructions, and he realized that ultimately that was decisive in the matter. It's like the lesson I've just taught here is that when in doubt, choose meow. And that's the fence sitter's dilemma, is sometimes one side is absolutely correct about something, and you're just splitting the baby in half to try to split the difference, or to try to be in the middle, right? So, really fascinating show, really compelling show. I love every minute of this show. I've watched all 4 seasons now, and every minute of it has been amazing, except for, I qualify that. There were about 3 minutes or so, maybe up to 4, that were not amazing. And those minutes included Carrie Underwood singing this horrible song to which they did the beginning highlights of the tournament. Those were the only moments of the show that I said, oh, somebody made a terrible decision here. Who decided to get Carrie Underwood to come? If you're gonna, I get they got that storyline with the tournament directors and this one dorky tournament director who thinks he's got Hollywood connections, wants to get a Hollywood star to come, blah 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 blah. But the problem is, as you realize as you're watching the rest of the tournament scenes, that the score is spectacular. I have the thing turned up loud because for some reason in this show the dialogue's a little quiet, but it gives it a more cinematic feel anyway. Then as a consequence, you get more score, and you have to turn the whole thing up louder. And man, during that tournament, it was scored beautifully. The music was so stirring, and it was also filmed and edited and everything just beautifully. Those fight scenes can look a little staged, It's unavoidable when you're doing complicated fighting scenes and stuff that people who are on the scout for the sort of stagey choreography looking things are going to be able to spot such things, and it's hard to keep the sort of fluid action of a fight scene going. I suspect I've never edited one or filmed one or anything, but I'm just speculating. But they did a great job with the tournament scenes. I mean, that's the other thing about the casting, right? It's all these kids, they got to be pretty good at jumping around and shit. Now, they're probably all 22 to 26 or something, except for maybe Kenny, who seems actually pretty young, but maybe looks young for his age. Who knows? They definitely could not get another season out of these kids being kids. And now they've aged out of the under 18 All Valley tournament. So in season 5, I'm not sure where they're going to go with that, and I'm not sure if it's going to work for me as well as seasons 1 through 4 did. I feel like it's completed a whole arc here. Although, by having Cobra Kai win and Kreese get arrested, obviously, they could have completed the whole arc with Kreese having learned something, kicking out Silver, and it all wrapping up tidily as a happy ending. And Miguel having, so it sort of feels like it was made to end after 4 seasons, which makes me skeptical about the 5th. But I don't even care if the 5th is terrible. This show, the first 4 seasons of it, are an absolute miraculous triumph. It is so good. If you haven't seen it and you watched all this video, well, thanks. I appreciate that. Go watch Cobra Kai now. And then come back and watch more of my videos. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to eat plenty of cheese.